Hello, welcome to Code and Box Automation Lab. This is Sherful. In this lecture, we're going to see functions in TypeScript. This is the continuation lecture about TypeScript. So we'll see what is function, how to create a declare a function, the function syntax, how function gets invoked or call or execute function, different type of function like a Lambda function and so on. Okay, so let's get some basic idea, then we'll see in our VS Code how to do this, all the things. So what is function? A function is a block of code that when it's executed, it does a specific job. So simply, function is a block of code, or you can say statement, that perform to do a specific task. This is a function. And one of the reason why people they create a function, because the benefit of reuse the same code. So if you have a function, it does a specific job, and if you need to do the job again and again, that time, other than writing the same code again and again, you can just create one time a function and then call that function whenever you need. So which is that reuse the same code other than writing the number of lines again and again. So function is one of the benefit of using function is that reuse the functions. And function is executed when something invokes or when you call the function. Here is an example. You can see the function syntax in TypeScript, even in Java, JavaScript. So you will have to create, type function is a keyword, and then there will be name, and then inside a bracket, you can say curly the bracket over here, you can put parameter like some variable and the type of the variable, like it depends on the data type, so which is called parameter. So it could have parameter, number of parameter, or sometimes you shouldn't mandatory that you have to be parameter. It can be without a parameter. So this is a simple syntax like a function keyword, the name, then inside a bracket you can have a number of parameters or empty parameters, and here is a curly braces. This is called your function body. So this is the real code you are going to type over here. What exactly the job you want to do by this function? It will be statement. It could have one line of a statement. It could have a multiple line of statement, and at the end it could return something. Okay, that's the function, very simple function syntax, you can say. So here, as I said, function parameter are listed inside the parenthesis. So this is the parenthesis bracket. The parameter should be inside the parenthesis bracket. And the function argument, which is when we call the function to invoke the function, that time the actual value you are going to pass, which will be against this parameter, that's called the argument. So your function argument are the values received by the function when it gets invoked. How function get invoked? There's a few different ways your function can be executed or invoked. So when an event occurs, like in a real life example, when you click on a button and it does something, like in a Facebook, if you have a like button, you click on like button and it shows the like button. So it means when you do something, there is an event occurs, that time it function gets invoked, that specific function, whatever it's supposed to do. And then you can execute a function or invoke function manually by calling that function name. So as an example, as per the syntax, the function, and then there will be name. So you can call that name. You can just call the name on your code manually. It will be executed. And also sometimes your function can get executed or invoke automatically by itself. That's the way. There is a recursive function, the function inside a function too. So and a function inside a function, that time you can automatically, your inside a function can get called on different way. It can make it execute automatically. So those are the three main way your function can get invoked. Let's see the type of function. So there is a mainly two type of function in TypeScript. It's one is called named function. Another one is called anonymous function. So name function, it's a very simple idea. Your function will have an actual name when you declare the function, and to invoke that function, you have to use that name. We just saw in our syntax example, previous slide. But there is another type of function. It's called anonymous function. So an anonymous function is one which is defined an expression, and that expression is stored in a variable. So the function itself doesn't have any name. So instead of name, your function will be stored in a variable, and to execute that function, you have to call the variable instead of the function name. So that's why it's called anonymous function, because your function will not have any actual name. Instead, it will store in a variable. Okay, so this is the two type of function we can say. So let's get back to our VS Code so that we can have some real example. Okay, so here is our function, or here is our VS Code where I create a file. Let's give a name function.ts, since it is a TypeScript. So let's create some simple function over here. So first we're going to see the named function, right? So as we said, right, there is two kind of function. Is one is name, another anonymous. So let's see the named function. Name functions. Okay, so for the name function, you have to use the keyword. Always use the function keyword to declare a function, and then you will give a name. So give a name, let's example display. Okay, and then this is your function body. You can put over here, and there is no parameter over here, right? So this is the function name is display. There's nothing inside, and this is your function body. So over here we can write whatever you want, like one line of code, multiple line of code. It really depends on you. So example, I'm going to just place one line of code, say console. I will print something, right? So console.log, and then what I want to print, I will say welcome to code inbox. So just, this is simple, print statement. And so this is a simple function. It's a function name is display. So display function will print one simple line, welcome to code inbox, right? And then if now how I can execute or invoke this function, to do this, simply you call by the name, which is the display, right? So display function, it will, you just call this by the name, which is the name display. It will, call this function, and it will execute the body inside this function. Okay, so let's save it and let's see this how to do this. Okay, sudo, you don't have to type the sudo when you run it in terminal, because for me, I don't have the admin permissions, but yourself, if you have admin permissions, then you don't have to type the sudo. But anyways, then you will, it's a tsc file, right? ts, it's a TypeScript file, so you are going to type tsc, then your file name, which is the function.ts, right? As you know, the TypeScript will not execute directly, so it will convert the TypeScript file to JavaScript, and then JavaScript will execute it. Okay, so that's why you have to first is convert the TypeScript to JavaScript. So to do this, so this is your actual code tsc, then your file name. Let's so it will convert. You will see it will create. You can see over here, this is our actual file, function.ts, and now we got another file is called function.js. So as soon as you run this ts file, it will create another file. It means it will convert this code to JavaScript. Now you have to run the actual JavaScript file to see the output. Okay, so to run the JavaScript file, you have to type node, then your file name, functions.js. Here we go. You can see the output is welcome to code inbox. So this is simple named function, and you call that function to execute or to see the output, right? So this is like without a parameter. Let's see, we can create another, we can call, create another name function including, the parameter types and return text. Let's what we're going to do, name function, create name function including parameters, right? Including parameter types and return type. Because in this function, there was no return type. It was just print statement, right? So let's see another name function with a parameter and return type. So let's, again, to declare a function, you use the function keyword, right? And then let's give a name, addition, and then to pass a parameter, number parameter 1 or 2, whatever you are, so inside the parenthesis, the bracket over here. So you'll like declare, it's like a variable, like other programming language you pass when you declare your parameter. So same, you declare a parameter, your variable, then like a Java, you say variable, then you type integer, right? The type of the variable. The same thing you are going to do over here, but it's a little bit different way. Over here in TypeScript, you'll say your variable, then colon, then the type of the variable, so example number, then comma, then it's same way. If you have a multiple, then say another one, number. So both are number, and you have to also declare your return type of this function if there is a return statement you have in this function. So what would be the return type? So I would say, so your return type would be number 2, right? And let's now create the body. So inside the body, I will say use the return keyword to to do the return statement, return keyword, and then I want to say x plus y, right? So what I'm saying, I have a function called name addition, and there is a 2 parameter, x and y, both are number type, and it will return also number type. The return would be by the function would be number type, and what would be the function activities? It will return, the between the addition, like between x and y, there will be sum, right? So how you can now execute or invoke this function? The same thing, right? We're going to call by the function name, right, which is addition. Now as soon as you call the function name, you see there is an error. What's the error? Because it's saying, it has expected 2 argument but got 0, because it has a 2 argument, but we didn't we didn't pass any actual argument, or it has a 2 parameter. We have to pass the actual value, which is the argument that match a real value. Instead of x something, and instead of y also should be something, right? So let's pass some real value. So I would say pass 10 and then 30. Okay, and now if you want to see the result, you can directly pass over here console.log, or you can put in a variable. It's up to you. Let's put in a variable. So I would say res result, and the type var, and then now let's put this res in a console.log, and then let's pass the res variable, right? So I would say let's make it a little bit nice. The result is, result is, and then pass, then use the concatenation, and then res, right? So what this will do, it will call. So now your return is holding the value, return value 10 and plus 30. The 40 will hold on res variable, and it will be through the console.log, it will print the result is 40, right? That should be the result output is 40, right? So let's save it, and then let's run it one more time. And then node function.js file, you can see the result is 40, right? So this is called another name function, but using a parameter type and the return type. You can see this is return. We use the return keyword for the return statement, and you have to also declare the return type, when you declare the function. So that's the in a very simple named function. First one is it's without a parameter and return statement, and second one is including parameter and return statement, right? So let's move on. Our second type of function, we said the second type of function is enormous function, right? Enormous function. Let's see how to declare the enormous function. So in an enormous function, what will happen? There will be in an enormous function, there will be no function name. So to declare an enormous function, you will just, definitely you are going to use the function keyword, and there will be no function name. Instead of function name, you put this function in a variable. Okay, so let's give a variable name. Would say example, so let's a variable type is var, and let's give a name. Let's give a name greeting. Okay, and let's create a function body. So let's simply again, let's pass one print statement. I would say, okay, let's do, so I would say welcome to Code Inbox Automation Lab. So in this function, this is an enormous function but without a parameter, right? And it will simply print welcome to Code Inbox Automation, this one. Okay, so now let's invoke the function. To do this, just call by the name. Call by the name, it's greeting, right? Save it, and then you should see the output. It shows this one, right? Let's again run the TS file, and then run the JavaScript file, right? JS file. You can see over here, welcome to Code Inbox Automation Lab. Okay, so this is simple enormous function, you see, without a name. This function doesn't have any name, but instead this function, save the expression of the function in a variable, and you call just a variable to execute the function. Now let's see the function, enormous function with a parameter and return type, like we saw, for the name function. So similar example we can do over here. That's what we're doing. Enormous function can have parameter, also return type. So let's do, I would say, again, create a function, use the function keyword, and then let's pass two variable. One is x, we'll say similar number, and then we can use the, I think we can use the same over here, the same, example, like for name one. Instead, I will just remove the function name addition, so there will be no name. Okay, there will be no name, and then let's give a function. Okay, and then I will put in a variable, right? So let's give a name, this time sum, and it's a var. Okay, this is the variable, right? So this time You see now this function have a 2 parameter and also return type, and the return statement is just a sum between x and y. So similar way how we can call this function, you can call this function just by the variable name, right? Like when you call function sum, and as soon as you call the function, it will see it has a 2 parameters, so you have to pass the argument. So let's pass some real value, 100 and 200, right? And if you want to see the output in your console, you have to print it. To do it, console.log, right? To the console.log, save it, and then let's run it. So in this case, you know what, I'm going to make a comment, all those things, right? So we don't have, okay, you can see the result, individual result for this. Okay, so let's make it clear. Now node functions, yes file, you can see the for this first function, first enormous function, welcome to code inbox, this is the one, and the second one with the parameter 1, we can see this is the result output is 300, like 100 plus 200, right? So that's the enormous function with the parameter and also return type. The example, very simple, right? So in over here, what will happen if we pass over here, like I have a 2 parameter, right? So what if I pass I pass like 1 parameter or 3 parameter? What will happen? So let's see that. Let's type it here and let's make it 1 parameter, see what happened. So let me see 400, right? So you will see, it will tell you, if you hover, you can see there is an error, right? And if you hover there, it will say there's expected 2 argument but got a 1. So it will show you this is a compiler error. So it means it's this function is expected 2 argument, but you are passing 1, so that's why compiler giving you error. And the similar way, if I pass another more than 2 argument, I can pass another argument, like say 300, and it will tell you the same thing. It will tell you it's expected 2 argument but got 3 value. So it means you are giving a more than 2, so it's not matching with your parameter. So your parameter have to be, your argument have to be exactly the same number of parameter you have on your function. Okay, so this is called this is called the compiler error, right? So this one have the compiler error, and this one also will have the compiler error. So let's make this one also in a comment, right? So just this is FY, make sure your argument match with your parameter number. Okay, so let's see now, so now we're see there is a parameter, we can pass the parameter, which is very clear, right? So whether it's named a function or enormous function. So there is some more details in information in regards parameter when you create a function. There is a 2 type of parameters in function when you create a function. You have to remember that. One is called optional parameter. Sorry, let me make a note. 2 types of parameter. parameters in function. One is called optional parameter, and another one is called default parameter. Okay, default parameter. So optional parameter and default parameters. So when you create a function with the parameters, you can whether follow optional or default parameters, syntax. Let's see what is optional, right? So let's go here. First, we are going to see optional parameters. So optional parameters, let's see an example. That when you by the name of the keyword we say optionals, it means your parameter, when you pass a parameter, when you declare a function with a parameter, your parameter can be optional. It means that the value of the parameter or argument of the parameter can be optional. So that's the the benefits using the optional parameter syntax when you declare a function with a parameter. Let's see an example. I would say let's create another function. Let's create another function, I would say, or maybe we can use the same function. Let's create a function, function, and then I would give a name grid. Function name is grid. Okay, and then I will pass two parameter, grading, and the type is string, and then another variable, it's name, and the type is also string. Okay, and then return type also is string. Okay, and let's put the variable body statement, and just simply say return. What I'm going to return, the concatenation between this grading and name variable. So grading, then let's put a space, empty space, right? And then class name. Okay, so whatever the value, when I'm going to call this function, that value will be directly come over here for the return and the name, and this will be returned, both value will be returned as a concatenation, right? So if I want to now print this, let's print it. I haven't explain you the optional parameter. Let me show this one first, and then I will show you in your regular function with a parameter how you can use the optional features, right? So let's see. I'm going to print it, console.how we can print console.log, and then call the the function by the name, right? Grid, and then as soon as you call the function, you have to pass the right parameter argument, right? So I would say, let's say hey. So hey for the grading, and then the second value would be like a debit. Okay, so let's make it also comment this one so that we exactly can see the output this one. Okay, let's save it. Now I'm going to run it again. Okay, you can see the output is hey David. So hey, it's the value for greeting, and the David is the value for name. So we're making concatenation, and it's returning hey David, and there is a space because I put a space over here. There is a space over here because I put a space, right? So this is very regular, the name function with the parameter, as we have seen, right? So now if we want to implement optional parameter features on that, how we can do this in that time. So example, say for the name variable, I want to make it optional. So it means, if to declare any parameter for your on your function, to make it optional, what you have to do for the with the variable, you have to place a question mark. Okay, that's all you have to do. Now let's see how it works. Like the since it means when you use the the question mark with this variable, the names, it means this name variable, the value for this name variable now is optional. When you call this function to invoke it, to execute it, in your argument, what it's now for the name, it's it's optional for you. Whether you give it any specific value, then it will go there. If you don't put any specific argument or value for this name variable, it will be optional. It will not throw an error like we saw over here. If you have a 2 parameter, you have to pass the 2 argument. But here now I make it name is optional, so now I can pass. In that sense, I can pass. Now let's pass just one variable, hey, one argument, right? So hey is going to be the replace or value for the greeting. There is nothing for the name, but you can see there is no error. But when we saw in our this example, right, when you pass one value, one argument for the 2 parameter, it gives you a compiler error. But in this case, now we're not seeing any error because I made this name variable or name parameter as an optional, right? So let's save it and see if we see any output issue also. So to do this, let's run it again. Function.ts. Sorry, syntax error inspected token. So, oh, sorry, I saw there is a oh, I guess I didn't save the file. Let's save it, and then let's clear it. Okay, let's run it again. Then node, then function.js file. Okay, here we go. So now you can see what's really happened. So we pass only hey for grading variable, but nothing for the name variable, because and there is no error because we say name is optional. But what's really happened in the return statement, since we have a both variable like greeting and name, so it's returning the value for the greeting, and also it's expecting value for name. But since we put the name is an optional and we didn't pass any argument, so instead of that, you can see in your output it says it's undefined. It means it's a name parameter, it's undefined without any value. So right now it says it's give you return, because in a return statement still we use the name, right? So it have to fill up some value, and it's automatically it's saying it is undefined. Okay, so that's the way it will show you the return or output if you don't use that if you don't make any parameter as an optional. Okay, so that's the. But on the other hand, if you make more than like 3 statement like we did before, it will definitely make you show you error. Say we say hey, then we said like David, and then we said say Sherfall. Definitely it will give you error because you are passing more than the parameters, number of parameters you have. Your argument is like 3, you have a 2 parameter, so that will not acceptable, right? So this is an compiler error again. Okay, so this is let's move on now, the default parameter. So this is very simple example we have seen. It's called optional parameter. Now let's see the default parameter. What is default parameter, or how it works? Default parameters. So default parameters, like we can use the same example. Let's use the same example. here we have to make it comment because it's using, the same function is multiple times. So let's make it comment. Okay, so here what we're going to do here, we have, let's make it, remove this one, and I would say let's just swap it and give a name first, then name and grading next. Okay, so name and grading, 2 parameters, right? And over here for gradings, default, it means you want to assign a value to a specific parameter when you declare. Okay, so you make this parameter value as a default. Okay, so here example, for name I keep it as a parameter, but gradings I wanna assign some specific value as the default for this grading parameters. So example, and how to define that, you have to declare over here when you declare the parameters. So define the functions. So that time we'll have to, so say example, I will say welcome. Okay, so welcome is the default value for this grading. So, and how this works, it is like, we're going to, let's say I'm going to call this function. So if I want to call this function same way, I would say so first is for the name I'm going to give a value is like John. So you are passing one, if you pass just one single value for the first parameter, which is a name, and it's a John is the value for name, and if you don't pass any other value for grading, it will automatically take the default value. Okay, that's the benefit of using default value. But if you pass more than another argument or another value for this grading, it will override the welcome value. Okay, let's see this one. Save it, and then let's run it. The node function.js, you see welcome, it's saying, because it's a return statement, its first is greeting. So what is the value of the greeting? It's welcome, so it shows welcome. And then for the name parameter, the value is John, so welcome John, right? So where this welcome is coming from over here. It's from the default value that we assign for greeting. But what if we say we pass 2 value, like 2 argument, like I would say David, and then let's put, I would say hi. Okay, save it, and then run it. Let's see what really happened again. Let's make it clear. Node, you can see hi David. So over here, so for the name it's got David, and for the grading it's now value is hi. So even it has the default value welcome, it's override by the argument, final argument you pass. So if you pass any argument for the assigned value, it will be override. If you don't pass it, it will take the default value. So that's the call to the default parameters. Like you assign some default value to a specific parameter when you declare your function. So that's the very simple example for the default parameters. Okay, now let's see, there's another specific function that it's used in TypeScript, and as well as it's used in JavaScript. It's called arrow function. Okay, let's see little bit what is arrow function. So when we use fat arrow notation for enormous function, it's called arrow function. It is also known as Lambda function in other languages too. Okay, here is an example. So it has example for your function. You have a your parameter, number of parameters, and then So you have a syntax. This is a syntax. In simple, you have a function and it has some number of parameters, as I said, and then you will use a arrow. This is called fat arrow. The fat arrow, this is the expression. So using a fat arrow, we can drop the need of use the function key. So you can see when you to define a arrow function, that time you are not going to use the function keyword because we're using a fat arrow for your output. And then so that's what he would say, like using a fat arrow, we drop the need of use the function keyword, and parameters are passed in the parentheses like we do, and the function expression is enclosed within the curly braces. So example, here is an example. So say here is an example. You can see there's a function name. There is no function keyword, and then there is a two parameter x and y, both are number type, and you can see it's a return type also number, and then we use fat arrow. So because of using this fat arrow expression, we didn't use any function keyword, and this is a statement, body statement, return x plus y, and then you put this function in a variable. So you can say this is an enormous function. So because this function doesn't have any name, so arrow function is an enormous function also. And then to invoke that function, you would just call by the name like sum, and then you pass the argument as number of parameters you have. Okay, so let's go back to our VS Code and see some some example of arrow function, right? So we're going to see example of arrow function. Okay, so let's use some simple example like the same example we have seen. Let's create parameter, pass some parameter like x is number, type is number, and y is also number, and the return would be also a number, right? Let's and since we're using a fat arrow, right? Since you are using fat arrow, and then that's why we don't need to use the function key function. The keyword is function. Let's put this one in a variable. So it says sum, and then it's a var, and then let's put this body statement. So here we'll say return x plus y. Return x plus y, right? So return x plus y, and then let's print it. So to do this, let's make it a console, right? Let's right, so save it, and then let's run it. I'm going to put this one. Let's run. Now its compiler will convert to JS file. So now let's run the JS file. Here we go. You can see 30, right? So where this 30 comes, 10 plus 20 is 30, right? So over here, the arrow function, the magic of arrow function, that it's eliminate the function keyword that you don't have to write, like unlike we saw this other functions, right? So that's the simple example of arrow function. So here we can do now, in an arrow function, there's a few more advantages. If you have parameter, you can have a parameter list of arrow function. So let's see how we can just do it. Let's say parameterless of arrow function. Parameterless of arrow function. So to do this, let's what I can say, I would say let's give a function variable, say example hello, right? And then your function, this is your function, there's no parameter inside, and then your fed arrow, and then your body could have body, could have, and then like one single statement, maybe we can say console.log, and then we can say probably just simple statement hello TypeScript, hello TypeScript. Okay, and then so this is a variable, right? So we have to say either var or let. Let's put in the let. So and let's make this, let me make this comment. So what I did, there is this arrow function is without a parameter. This one was with a parameter. This is there's no parameter. So to do this, you have to do the same thing, just keep it empty, and then you pass your body statement, right? Let's run this. You can see it's supposed to print hello TypeScript, right? Node function.js. It didn't print, probably it didn't save it. Why it didn't save? Oh, I didn't call that function, right? You have to print it, you have to call this function, because it is a printing statement over here, but you have to call it to invoke it, right? The function name is hello. Let's run it again. Let's clear it. Node function.js. You can see it's calling this function hello, and then it's printing hello TypeScript, right? So that's the way you can create an arrow function without a parameter. Okay, so just one thing, remember, like there is a, if the function body consists of only one statement like this, there is only one statement, right? Then no need to, for curly braces, you don't have to use the even curly braces and the return keyword. So example, it means when you have a only one statement, that time you can avoid even this curly braces from the body, and also the return keyword. So example, for our this, I'm going to use this example, the same example again, because it has a one statement also, right? So we can write this, function different way without a curly braces. So this is the node, like if the function body consists of only one statement, then no need to use the curly braces. So in this case, how can we declare the same function? We can say over here, let's remove the curly braces, this one too, right? And let's remove the return key. Okay, and here we can just put this body statement over here. Okay, so you can see we remove the curly braces, and also we remove the return keyword, and that should be good, right? It should be good. Okay, let's make it comment this one so that we can see this is the output. Save it. Now we should, let's make it 20/20/40. Now let's run it again. You see, after the hello TypeScript, this printing 40. So here, because we just had a only one, this is the actual function. We had a only one written statement, and so instead of, if you have a only one return statement, that time you can ignore this curly braces and also return a keyword, and you can declare your function this way. So your output, just only one statement come after the fed arrow. Okay, so that's the way you can use the arrow function and avoiding or ignoring your curly braces and return key. But you have to remember, if the statement, you have a body statement, it's only one statement, right? So that's the arrow function. Next topic would be, say, function overloading. So what is function overloading? Let's see some theory a little bit. So function overloading, the TypeScript provide the concept of function overloading. You can have multiple function with the same name but different parameter types and return type. However, the number of parameters should be the same. So if you are familiar with other languages like Java, Java have the similar overloading concept. It means you can have a multiple function can have the same name, but the inside the function, the parameter, which is called the function signature, your signature have to be different, but the type number of parameter have to be the same. Like if you have 2 parameters, your both function have to be 2 parameters. The parameters types and your parameter type could be different, but the number of parameter, if it's a 2, your both have to be 2. If it's a 3 parameters, your both function have the parameter should be 3. It means your signature of your function have to be different, but the number of the parameter have to be same. And also you return that's what it says, right? So that's that very similar concept that we use in TypeScript also. Okay, let's go back to our VS Code. Okay, in VS Code, I just declare 2 function. Okay, there's 2 function, both it's both are the name function, both name is same. You can see it has a 2 parameter, both of them have the 2 parameter, but the parameter type is different. The first one is A and B with both a string and return type is string, and the second one is A and B but return type both are its number type and also return type is number. Now this is just function declare. I haven't implement. Where is the body of the function? It's not, I haven't created. So it means this both function is not implemented yet. This is just declare of the function. So to implement a function, I'm going to create another function. Let's go function, then it would be the name same add, and I'm going to use the same variable name like A and B, and the parameter type it's any. In a function, your parameter type, this is any is the another type of parameter. So you can, any is a authorize another type of parameter. So you can use any keyword too. So and let's make it be also any type of variable, any, and your return also any. Okay, let's make it the body, it's like return return statement A plus B. Okay, A plus B. Now this is the implementation, of this 2 function, this 2 as same add function. How this is going to work, this is the body statement, you can see. Okay, so it means when I'm going to now call to invoke this function, let's invoke the function. So to invoke the function, what do? We use the call by the name, right? Add, and then which function is going to be run or invoked depends on the value I'm going to pass. Okay, so example, if I pass hello and another argument is, say example, step. So it will return, it will call, this function will call which one? This will call this, the first one. Okay, so that time it will override the other function, right? Sorry, overload the other function. So this one will call, because it matches my argument value is matching with this string. I'm passing this string, so that's why it will call this function. And how is going to implement? It will implement a plus b, so it means hello plus step, right? It will it will be returned hello step, right? That's the way. So it will return hello step, hello step. Okay, that's the way it will return. Okay, now if I make the same function and pass the number parameter, right? So number parameter, say 100 and 200. This time it will call, this time it will call the other function, this one. So this time this will be overload, right, of the string. So this time this will be prioritize the number function, this one. Okay, so and the return would be 300. Okay, so that's the way the overload function it works. Okay, and one thing, just remember, the function overloading with the different number of parameters and type have to be the same. Okay, so that's the one thing you have to remember, the types with this same name. And if you, so it means, so example, so it means like, you know, your both function, the number of parameters, like it has a 2 parameters, the parameter should be different, that's fine, like one is string, another one is number. But if you, but it have to be, the number of parameter have to match, like you have a 2 parameter, that your other function have to be have 2 parameter also. If you provide over here 1 parameter, this not going to work. Okay, that's the thing you have to remember. So it means, you know, let me put the note here, it doesn't support, right, overload. To make it overload, you have to make sure your number of parameters for the multiple function have to be same number. Okay, example, let me just, I'm going to copy one function, places here. So there is a display function over here, it has a 2 parameter, a and b, both are a string, and it's a void, you know, because it's a printing a plus b. So, and then if I create another function, let me create another function, you can see I create another function by the same name, display, and but with the 1 parameter, it has a 2 parameter a and b, but the second function I have, it's 1 parameter, you know, and as soon as I pass 1 parameter, you know, it's giving me compiler error. Okay, it's saying, you can see duplicate function implementation is a, you know, that's it has your function, both function have, you know, first one is it has a 2, because the over here it didn't give you any error, even though you have a both function have the same name, because it under the compiler understood that this is a, you know, overloading function, because we have the same number of parameters. Like if you just remove 1 over here, let's remove 1 over here, you will see it will show you 1 error. So it will not treat as a, that time it will not treat as a overloading. Okay, number, okay, it has an implementation, and then that time, sorry, let's get back to our over here. Here, you know, if you run now, let's see it's what will happen here. You can see it's giving you error here, like even though it's because it's now it's treating both are same name is displayed because it's now it's treating it's this is not the concept of the overloading. It is treating is this two function is separate, so you cannot have multiple function with the same name if it's a separate function. Okay, so that's the problem over here. So you cannot do this. It will give you compiler error. So you have to match with your your parameters. Over here is a two parameters, you need a two parameters also. Okay, so that's the overloading concept. So I think it's pretty much that's all about the function. I think there is a one more concept it's remaining, which is called reset parameters. Probably we'll make it separate video, but that's all for today. We have learned a lot of things about the function in TypeScript, like what is functions, the declaration of functions, type of functions, like name functions, enormous functions, like, and then in the function you can have a empty function, I mean non-parameter or parameters, right? We have seen the arrow functions, and we have seen the default parameters, how to declare default parameters. We have seen optional parameters, right? So we have seen arrow functions, right? And finally we have seen the function overloading. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. There is a lot more things to learn in regards TypeScript, and definitely we'll have a final one tutorial where we're going to do some real example in Cypress, like we're going to write our code in TypeScript for Cypress example, and then we'll run that example, that real life example, and we'll see how it works in the Cypress using the TypeScript. Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Bye bye.